So this is the bumblebee we're going to make. And the first thing we need to do is make a leaf. And that's using your green quantity of sugar paste and maybe a touch of yellow just to make it a larger piece. We're just going to roll that into a fat cone shape, give it a good flatten. Bit of corn flour on the palm of your hand. If you feel it's going to stick, we can just tease that out, but not allow it to go too thin. Bring it to a bit of a point here. We can just stretch it a fraction to bring it to a point. Not so it tears, but it is quite flexible. So you've got a little bit of CMC in there if you feel like it needs a bit more stretch. And then just mark in with the cutting wheel your vein texture, and using the side of a paintbrush or maybe something that's rounded, just pull that, kind of press it into the side and then pull down a little bit, and that will give you the serrated edges. And this then can either rest on the board, a bit of corn flour underneath if you don't want to stick, or a bit of glue if you do. Okay, so to make the rocks, grey paste, just break off pieces. We want one large, two slightly smaller. Roll it into a crack-free ball, give it a little press, and that will form your rock. So you can make small ones as well. And if you want to, you can roll nice, smooth, round balls, roll them into a bit of an oval shape, give it a tap to press, and that will give you a pebble. And you can also, from the pebbles, make stepping stones as well. So if you've got a nice rounded ball of paste, make it into a bit of an oval shape, and then press it slightly flat. And then you can see how you could probably make like a pathway up to the side of a house, if the cake's house, or maybe it's a gravel garden, or something to do with to a shed or anything like that. Okay, and then those we're going to position but not stick. So for the bee's body, I've got just over 4 centimetre ball, 45 grams. Give that a good old warm up, and we're going to shape it into a cone. If you've made the teddy bears, lots of the other characters have all got cone shapes for bodies. That's where I end up starting each time. So I'll give that a good old warm up between my palms. Roll it nice and smooth. Press quite firm between your palms. You'll end up with a spinning top, and then you can gradually reduce the pressure to reveal the ball. And if you have got any cracks on there, you can rub your finger just to try and help them go. And if for some reason it's really difficult to get rid of the cracks, you might have to go back to warming up again. So I've got the ball in my palm. I'm going to put the heel of my hand, this part here, chicken drumstick part, onto one side of the ball, and then I'm going to roll from side to side. Okay, and just pressing down a little bit as I do, so that it narrows to a point at that end. But we want a nice plump shaped body, because he's quite a fat bumblebee. He's quite satisfied with the amount of pollen he's been collecting. And when you've created it, you can just curve it slightly. So this will be his head end, and this will be balancing a little bit on the rocks that you've made, or just at the front of the rocks. So when I'm looking at that, as a length of cone, it's just over 6 centimeters. Okay, and this position wise, I'm going to have it about here. Okay, now knowing that, I'm just going to move this little rock in to form a little bit of a bed. If I turn that round, you'll see. Let's just change camera angle for you as well. So it's sitting on one of those rocks. This one is going to help hold the head, and then we've got kitchen towel if we need to support it further. And when you're looking at this, just make sure that you have actually got enough room for the head to be within the board and for the feet. And he's got his feet crossed, so that will be fine. So I want to make just a couple of marks just to help me, remind me where things are going to be going. And the main thing is it's the back legs. So I'm going to just do a very light press either side of the fat end here, just to create an indentation, a starting point for where the legs are going to go. You could poke in a tool if you want to, but it's not necessary. We just need a little indentation either side. And we can put some glue in that area already. But we also need to glue, it's a good indication as well, because we've got his sting going on. So it's like his bottom, his tail, if you like, in the middle of that. So now you know where those indentations are. You need to leave that area clear. So your plunger type shape for his sting, for his tail, is going to go in the center of that, a bit like the bottom of a nappy. And we need to get the plunger and the stripes, so the tail and the stripes, done before we can attach the arms. So I've got my glue at his bottom, glue where I've indented for his legs, and then I'm going to draw a line, a light line of glue across his belly. You could even give him a belly button if you wanted to. And then I'm going to do a second cross here. Now, when you do that, make sure you've got the tiniest amount of glue on your brush, because we don't want to make the black bleed. And once you've done that, we're going to be working with black. And once you've finished working the black, we're going to need to clean our hands off before we go back to the arms and the legs. Now, when I'm making the tail or anything that I'm not sure about the size, I need to kind of do a rough mock-up to make sure that I've got enough. And when we're making the tail, it's going to be like a plunger, a sucker, or a Mexican hat style, if you're familiar to making sugar flowers. So I'm going to start off with a ball of paste. I'm not going to tell you how much because I don't know if it's big enough anyway. And then I want to pinch out a point. That's going to be the sting. And then with my finger or my thumb, I want to press in to create an indentation. So it's almost starting to look like a witch's hat or golf tee. We don't want this super thin. It needs to be quite even as well. We don't want it too rickety. And it's surprising, even though this isn't going to be thin, how big this gets. Okay, so it's concave in there. It's a little bit indented. And when I'm holding that up against the tail, the bottom end of him, the bee, you can see that that kind of looks like it's all right. So I'll just show you that from another view, and then I'll show you how to make it. So I'm going to curl the point up, and if I'm holding that up against him, I think that that is okay for his sting. So showing you how to make that again. And the amount of paste that you're going to be working with is about 1.5 centimeters. So give it a good warm up. Roll it into a point. So you could actually just use your palm to do this, or if you prefer, just use your finger and thumb and just pinch a point, lightly holding it as you're needing to let go to keep the top end nice and rounded. So you've got your point, not too thin because it might break off, and then just use your finger or your thumb to press down. Just support it while you do that. And then between my finger and thumb, I'm going to just gently and evenly hollow that area out. Just keep working round and round. Try not to get it too thin. And just be aware when you attach it, it might move. You might have to keep an eye on it. We just hope that we haven't got too much glue on his bottom so it bleeds. If you find that some of your paste does bleed, because working black colours on a different colour is actually, I find, very hard. So if you're making characters like Panda or Penguin and the bee, it's so easy to mess it up because there's too much glue on there. So what you can do is use a clean damp brush and just wipe off the bleed, and then rinse your brush, dry it off almost completely using kitchen towel, and then wipe again, and just keep going until you eventually end up removing the mark or most of the mark. Okay, so that's your little witch's hat now. And my one, when you're looking at a ruler, is going to be about 2.5 centimeters long, tip to toe. Okay, 3.5 centimeters long. When you're happy with that piece, I feel like I want to just squish it on one side to make it slightly oval, and then that's going to go on sideways. So we're going to bring it with the oval widthwise and attach it. Come up a little bit higher than you think maybe you should, because that will make him look like he's properly curved. And once you've got that attached onto his bottom, you can curl the sting up. Looks like a chili pepper. So again, we don't know how much of this paste we're going to need for his stripes. So I'm just going to start with a small piece of paste. I've got 1 centimeter ball of paste. Warming it up between my palms, and then I'm going to roll this into a sausage, and I like to use this part of my hand and just roll across. And as you're rolling, roll up and down or side to side so that you're not working on the same spot. That way you should find that it doesn't come to a point. Now at some point this piece that we're going to roll is actually going to be tucked slightly under the bee's body, so it doesn't matter if it's too long, we can trim it and tuck it under. So at the moment this one is about 0.5 centimeter in width. And now with a bit of corn flour, I want to just flatten this again with my palm, not my fingers, because that will make it look wobbly. So just press to flatten. A bit sticky. And then you can, if you want to, use just something on the sides. You could even use a ruler just to flatten. Okay. The other option is to cut it, but I honestly think that you get more of a frayed edge doing that than you do with what I'm doing here. If you were cutting this, what you would probably want to do is take the blade of your knife, and rather than score through, which can drag it and distort the shape, you would take the pointed blade, end of the blade, onto the edge of your paste, and then you, just changing the angle here, you would literally draw down and rock to cut the piece off, and that will give you a clean cut. Okay, So if you would like to make it using a knife, that's the way you would work. So touch the tip of the blade, you draw down and rock and come back up. You're not scoring because that will distort the shape of the paste. And then once you've created your piece, carefully lift, and we're going to place. You can start with the smaller one first if you want. So these are raised, they're not recessed into the shape. They are raised pieces. And with your scissors, your craft scissors, you just help that go under a little bit, just so it gives you a bit of a crease so you know where to cut. And then you can take your scissors and trim and just give it a little press to attach. And we'll do the same on the other side. And then again, where your other stripe is. And depending on what you'd like, you can make your stripe as long or wide. Just do a little bit of trim and press into place. So that can be wider if you want. You can put more than 2 on there if you want to as well. So I'm just going to do my other one, but a little bit more paste for the second one. There's a lot going on to the model. So if you do a lot of black stripes, it does show, and you've got to think that maybe this is your third one. So 1, 2, 3 is probably enough. So into a ball, use the flat of your other hand to roll and make sure you work on the whole sausage rather than just in the middle. This one will be wider. A bit of corn flour. So at this point, you could drop it down and roll it if you wanted to, or you can flatten using your palm. I just think that gives you a more rounded edge. If it's a bit wobbly, then you can use either the back or the blade of the knife to straighten it off. And then this one we can lay across. And then work out roughly where you want it to tuck in, give that a little trim and drop it into place. So everything's very light. Okay, this one's a bit short on here, but by the time we've got his leg on, that's not going to show. We went to Jane Austen's house over in Hampshire day before yesterday. I went to see see Lynn and Sue. I don't know if some of you know Lynn and Sue because you would have been taught by them at some point. But yeah, I went to see Lynn, who lives in Hampshire now, and all the things, the cards, the embroidery, everything had bees on it. Beautiful. So for the shoes, again, I need to kind of roughly work out what sort of size I want to create. And once I'm happy with that, then I can roll 2 balls the same size for each shoe. So we'll do the main part of the shoe with a ball that is just under 2 centimeters diameter. Okay, I'll just change camera so you can see the ruler. Okay, so just under 2 centimeter diameter. So match those 2 balls first. Do the matching by eye. Pull a bit off if you think it's too much. And then there is a little like an ankle sock almost, which is quite a bit smaller. So we do 2 further small balls, which are about 3/4 of a centimeter. So they're under a centimeter, but again, you need to match them. So make sure you do that by eye before you start the first one. That's the important thing. Okay. And I'll just show you how we form one shape. Into a ball, into a cone. But not too elongated, not too fat, and not too pointed at this end. Then you tap it to flatten it just a little bit. And just place that down for a moment. Warm up your small ball. And then we're going to drop that ball. Actually, probably flatten it, just touch it a little bit so it becomes a disc. And we drop that ball on top. Okay. Now, if you have, it wasn't on the kit list, if you have a bone modeling tool or the back of a paintbrush, you can insert that, and that will give a little well which will help for the bee's legs to go into. He's got skinny legs. Okay. At the back, if you pick it up and turn it over, because obviously that's the top of the shoe, using your cutting wheel, if you want, you can cut in a little heel. This makes it look a bit more realistic, and bearing in mind that one of his feet is up, so you can see the sole. It's quite nice to have that detail in there. I'll show you the second shoe. So I'm using the same paste quantities into a ball, into a fat cone, not too pointed at the thinnest end. One little press to stop it from being very rounded. We're not trying to flatten it, it's just that shoes are not, they're not circular, they are a bit flat on top. And then we're going to take the second ball, little ball, give it a good warm up. If it starts to crack when you press it down, then you might need to warm up a little bit. So I've just made it into a fat disc. There's no glue involved with this either because it's quite tacky, but if you feel like you need to add some, you can. So that can drop on there. And then either using the back of a paintbrush or your bone modeling tool, just put the fat end of the bone modeling tool into the center of that small disc to form an indentation. They're quite nice little detail. And then add in a little sole on the back. And the sole you're cutting in just over a third. It's not quite halfway. Think about the back heel of your shoe, of a man's shoe. And when you've made the shoe, in terms of length, it comes in about 2.5 centimeters. Width-wise, 1.5 centimeters. You can make them bigger if you like. If your bee wants to have big feet, that's fine. Record. So for the cape at the back, which is nothing to do with the real bee, they don't have this bit, but it's just to disguise the join of the head. Just got a ball of paste, which is going to be about 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Ball, bit of corn flour if you feel like it's going to stick, and then we're going to start by flattening that area. Just tease it out a little bit, but don't make it too thin. It's just maybe 2 mil in thickness. Okay, just maybe neaten it off a little bit. Again, you could roll and cut this as a circle shape, but not everyone's got circle cutters. And this is going to just go on to here as a little flap. Most of it's going to be hidden by the head, but to help it attach, we'll just put a small brush of glue. I might even move this rock out a little bit in anticipation of it needing to support the head, and then just lay this piece onto the tip. You can give it a bit of movement if you want. It's very weird. Just something like this. Okay. I'll just change the view. I feel like I want to put that rock further on and let that come down a fraction. So I'll just change the view so you can see that from the side. It's an optional piece, but it does make his join look better. So just think of a handkerchief draped over a rock. That's all it is. And then we are finished for the moment with the black. Keep your little shoes to one side, and we're going to come back to making the arms and legs. So I've got, this is the smaller of the two remaining balls. I'm going to roll just one sausage just to check my sizing. Now, I've made the bee with skinny legs, and when they're created, you're going to sit this end into the boot, and that is going to kind of sit like so on the side of the body. This is just a rough roll at the moment, so I'll show you. So looking at that, I'm thinking it's pretty much okay. Maybe put just a fraction more paste with that, and then we'll get that into a ball. And the quantity that I'm using is under 2 centimeters, so it's about 1 3/4. Okay, not bigger than 2 as a diameter on the ruler. It's quite important. The other thing that I get frustrated with is that if you've used your J cloth to wipe the surface down, then when you use your J cloth to clean your hands, the dust is on your hands from the J cloth from cleaning the surface, and then that transfers into your paste. So you just need to, there's nothing you can do. It's like a magnet. So you just need to try and be as clean as possible. Maybe have a fresh J cloth or wash your hands rather than use the J. So my ball of paste, I'm going to match a second one. And I know probably we're going to have the same quantity of paste for the arms. So you may as well make the other 2 balls as it is ready. But we're not going to use them just yet. So you don't need to warm them up. Just get 2 balls roughly the same size ready for the arms, and they can go to one side. So for the legs, what we're going to do is roll into a ball. Everything starts as a ball. It's the best way to roll things up, to warm things up. So into a ball, into a sausage, but pressing down slightly on one side so it becomes slightly thinner at the ankle end. So just keep rolling. We don't want to go too mad, so you have to stop and kind of look. Fat end will be the thigh, the thin end will be his ankle. And when I'm looking at this size-wise, it's going to come in at about 4.5 centimeter in length. Halfway, or just short of halfway, so I've got more on the bottom part of his leg than I have on his thigh. I'm just dropping that over my thumb, so it's at a right angle. And then between my finger and thumb, I'm going to pinch, just form a little ridge. And then I'm going to take 2 fingers and push to create a peak. And what you're doing is creating a kneecap. I'm actually going to roll on the back side there as well. So you could just end up bending it, but if you wanted to look more knee-like, you can create it like this. So I'll show you that again. We'll keep it bent. I'll show you the second leg, give you the process. So into a ball, pressing down slightly firmer because you want it to become like an elongated cone. 4.5 centimeters in length, roughly. Drop it over your thumb, whichever thumb's easier. I'm left-handed, so I like to hold with my right. So once you've got that draped over, you would take your finger and thumb, come to the top, and just give it a little pinch. It's not a really strong one, to start forming a ridge. And then between your fingers, push from the top. So you've gone pinch sideways, push from the top, rock, which gives you the back of his knee. So you've got this. I'll let you form those, and then I'll show you how to attach them. We don't want to leave them too long because they will dry. So to attach these, I start by placing the thighs. And then once you've got the legs on, you'll know where the shoes are going. So we're going to take one little leg and Oh, it's going to start on the right hand side. You can see from the model in the background that his right hand leg is kind of up in the air, but then bent like so. We've already got our glue in there, so you can just press a little bit on the thigh end to encourage that to stick. We're going to bring in a little booty. You've got to be careful not to get the glue black, so it's better if you actually paint the stubby end of his leg and then position into the shoe. Okay, and just remember that a bit like human beings, we've got bones, so things don't curve. Not as much anyway. So that's quite nice, and I like to turn his shoe inward, and then it looks quite cute. And the other one, we've got him, it's kind of trying to cross his leg, so more up in the air, like so. He's doing a bit of Pilates, isn't he? Okay, just make sure that's sticking. So find the area where you've got the glue. If you feel like it's not going to attach, then just add a bit more glue. Support that while you just give another little bit of glue. Not too much because you don't want it to bleed. Then we locate the leg end into the shoe, and this now can sit across his body. Now you can decide how you want this to look. Likely it'll fall just like this one has done. So wherever you want that to go, we need to get a bit of glue in place so that the shoe holds in position. Okay, mine needs a little bit of fiddling because I don't like the way it looks. But I'm feeling like I want him to cross more over his body. That looks a bit better. Because the glue's only just gone on, that's going to make him a little bit loose. And I clearly need to paint a bit of glue underneath the back of his foot now to help that secure. So if I paint the glue this time onto the shoe, I have to. And then I'm just going to have a look at the model and see what I like. If fellow wants to think that he's in a deck chair wanting to, I don't know, read a newspaper or something. So just keep hold of that for a few moments until it sticks. You could, if you wanted to, have it positioned in the same as the other one. I'll leave it to you. Almost wants to come across his body a bit more. And tip. A couple of times. So into a ball, into a bit of an elongated cone like we did the legs. It ends up being about 5 centimeters in length. The thin end is going to be his shoulder end. Now, the reason for that is because we want enough for the palm, but if that ends up being the fattest end, he looks quite bodybuilderish. So I always use the narrow end for the shoulders, regardless of whether it's male, female, whatever you're making. And this part is going to form the palm. So to create the indentation for the wrist before it becomes wide, we want to kind of look at it and think, right, okay, the wrist is going to come in about here. So between my finger and thumb, not thumb, between my two fingers, I'm rolling against just the edge here, creating an indentation. Here's become a bit fat, so I'm going to use my fingers to gently roll. Everything's very light And remember, if you haven't got CMC in here, sometimes it's difficult to work with. So if you're having trouble, you could dunk it in a little bit of CMC, a little bit extra. So it looks a bit like an old clothes peg. And now we want to flatten the end for the palm. So all I would do, a bit of corn flour so it doesn't stick, and then just put your finger over the fat end and press. Come off. We don't want it too thin. And that gives you the wrist and the paddy paw. And that's how it's going to go onto the bumblebee. So like before, we're going to form an elbow. And if you think about where your elbow is versus your hand, the hand might be flat like this, and then your elbow is on the side. Okay. So if we imagine that's the same for this one, you've got the flat pad of the hand. So your elbow is going to be on the side. So we turn it so that part drapes over just like you made the knee. And then between your finger and thumb, press in a little ridge and push in a little point. So you get an elbow instead of a knee. Okay. Now, not for the bee, but taking this one step further, if you wanted to create fingers, you can do it one of two ways. This would be if you're making a person. Okay, so we start by just kind of curling this part here, flattening it just a little bit. You would cut in here one snip quite straight, so you're going to cut parallel in. So this is something to practice once you've made your model arm. Snip off and press where you've snipped so that it becomes rounded. That's the thumb. And then this area here, we would neaten off again, so it's more rounded. And that's where you make your 4 fingers. So we come in and we snip in the middle for the, like a peace be with you by Spock, Star Trek. Then we come in beside on one side and divide. And then you do the same on the other side, divide. Now, the little fingers sometimes I shorten because it's got to be smaller. And here you can actually start to pull the fingers apart and stretch them a little bit to elongate, and just very light touches around the squared off areas will enable you to round them. Middle finger is always longer, pointing finger nearly as long. So my pointing finger is quite small here. Then you would bring the 4 fingers together, and you can curl them over and shape them however you want. So that way you've got a thumb and 4 fingers. Okay, it's a bit wobbly. These would be quite close. I like to do like drinking a cup of tea or dancing. This one's a bit short. So that would be how you would create a hand for a person. But going back to and reminding you, what we're making for the bee is just a palm, no thumb. You could put a thumb in there if you want to. So elongated cone is going to be about 5 centimeters long. You have to remember to make both arms roughly the same length. Coming in about a centimeter from the end, rolling between your 2 fingers. Create the wrist. Come back here because it looks a bit fat. Bit of corn flour if you think it's going to stick. Press to flatten the palm. Locate where the elbow is going to go, which will be on the side in the middle here. Drape that part over your finger. Pinch to form a ridge, push to form a point, and rock to get the inside of the elbow. Now, when you do the other one, the elbow will be on the opposite side. So just remember that when you're making, or you could just turn it over, assuming that it looks all right on the other side. So into a ball, final show. Elongated cone. I don't try and make it too pointed, but the fattest end is about 5 centimeters long. Fattest end will be where the palm will be. Roll in your wrist. That's this movement. If it's fat here, just a little bit of pressure. Drop that onto your palm, flatten. And just remember now that it's the opposite elbow. Doesn't matter. It normally is fine, whichever way you use it. Drop it over, pinch, push, rock, and that gives you your other arm. These have actually got a bit cut out. So if you position how roughly they're going to go onto the body, and then if you cut them straight so that you've got a straight end to attach to the top of the bee body, because the bee body is quite narrow. Making hands and feet is quite you know, when you want to make them look realistic. I mean, obviously they wouldn't be in Simpsons color, but you have to make hundreds of pairs to get to the point where you're happy, and probably I would say 1 in 2, 1 in 3 I'm happy with. So you just, every time you get a spare bit of paste, just model a foot or model a hand. Because the ankle is formed in a similar way. So you end up with your sausage the same as before. You roll in a little bit of an ankle. So this is if you make a leg and with a foot. A little bit of an ankle. Here's a bit thick. And you can see that this would be maybe the heel of the foot. So you'd bend that over. Pinch in a bit more of a point at the back where you'd have a heel. So you make your elbow there. And this then becomes flattened. So you can roll a bit more if you want. Flatten it out a bit more. So you've got a rough foot. So if you wanted to make a bee without shoes, but also then you've got the shape of a human's foot, which would have an arch in the middle. So you need to find a way of pressing in, flicking the toes up. So you can see now you've got something that resembles maybe a little bit of a foot. And then think to yourself, oh, the big toes longer, the small toes, so your foot's more shaped like this. And then for the toes, I'd probably roll the cutting wheel over to make the toe shape. This one's got a bunion. Then something like this, if it wants a skinny leg, you need a knee. Then more often or not, the thigh is too long, and then you need to kind of pinch and twiddle to remove the excess. That gives you a leg. So we'll just pop some glue very carefully on the side here. I don't really want to catch this cape part. Just enough to hold it. And where you've cut a little angle, you can maybe smooth that on the long side so it becomes more natural looking. And that can sit onto the model and drop onto his belly. And straight away now it looks like it's got better detail. Before it looked like the legs make it look very long and not much interest going on, but by adding these arms it's going to look like something. So I want to cross them. I kind of want, he's resting on his belly, he's got his palms on top, he's snoozing. So a little bit of glue where the palm's going to rest, perhaps here. Remember to keep everything as if it's a bone, as if it's, you know, if his forearm is curved, it's going to look a bit weird. And then we can get this palm glued on top of the other. I've got his elbows kind of sinking down onto the side of his body, so he's nice and comfy. So we're going to make the wings with a 2 centimeter diameter ball of paste. Just take this one out of the way for the moment. So match your 2 ball sizes first before you start, and then we're going to take just one piece at a time. A little bit of corn flour if you think it's going to stick, and then roll like you did for the leaf shape, but slightly more elongated. A little bit of corn flour. I didn't before because it didn't feel like it's going to stick, but now I think it will if I press it. I haven't gone correct with the bee. It's my take. So you might decide that your bee wings are going to look different. You might want double ones, but then just they look a little, it starts to look a bit like a butterfly if you put double wings on it. So this is kind of fattish, but it's a nice elongated cone into a flat teardrop shape. Make sure that will peel off your hand. A bit of more corn flour if you feel like it's going to cause you a problem. And then, like we did before with the cutting wheel, we're going to lightly texture this. But this time we've got to think, well, what does a bee's wing look like? It's got very, very fine structure, hasn't it? Very fine texture. So we're just going to maybe run the tool twice down the center, just slightly at an angle. And maybe that's with the big cutting wheel. And then turning it over to use the small one so you've got more control. We can just curve out, cut out. So they're not, you don't want it to look so much like a leaf, more like the veins on a wing. We could have, I feel like I want to put one more line in there. So not much, and it's really not that indented. And then we can repeat that. So ball, cone. If it's not warmed up enough, if it's a bit cracky, because that's going to show, we'll just rewarm, ball, cone. Bit of corn flour again. Tap to flatten. These are thinner than the leaf, but I haven't gone really, really thin. Just rough teardrop shape. They don't have to be perfect. This one isn't. And then if you turn it so you've got the pointy end at the top, and then you run your vein line towards the fat end, making it come out a little bit. So it's slightly diagonal, and then draw in a fairy-like structure in the wing. Now these are going to be attached to the back of the arms and possibly part of the side of his body. Attaching the wings, glue the back of his upper part of his arm and just onto the body side underneath the arm, and then the same back of his arm here and slightly onto the body. Then we can take the wing, whichever one you want to put on. So you can have a look at the shape and that will help decide which side is which. The narrowest end, so where your lines radiate from, that's going to be uppermost, so towards the upper part of his body. So we just set that in, hold it in place for a few moments, and then just allow it to kind of curve over your hand a little bit so it opens up. Makes him look quite relaxed. And the same for this side here. So pointy end uppermost towards the head end. Locate the area where you've glued. Hold it in place for a few moments. And then when you're happy that the top end, the bit that's touching the body, is holding, you can curl it back a little bit on your finger, and maybe this one will be more suspended. Possibly not. By the time it's dry, it might just kind of droop down. So not a bad thing to help it. You could put one of the little rocks or make more rocks for it to sit on. Okay. This wing on this side, I think, is a little bit longer. So I'm feeling like I want to trim that slightly so that it fits more equally. It's just kind of a symmetrical thing, really. Just felt like it was a bit long. So I'm just trimming that and attaching. Just take care as you're pressing onto the figure that things that you have already attached are not changing position or falling off. Reposition if they have. Foot has a mind of its own. So for the head, I'm using about 25 grams of yellow. It's about 3.5 centimeters ball of on the ruler as a diameter, and then I've kept some back for the cheeks. Okay, so you only need about 2 centimeter ball for the cheeks. Give that paste a really good warm up. Just twist, squidge, roll really tightly between your palms. Get it nice and crack free. Hopefully none of the black has gone on there. Relax the pressure to get it into a crack free ball. And then maybe with a flat hand, just roll once, twice, perhaps a third time to get yourself an oval shape. So on the ruler, about 4 centimeter wide. And it's going to go on. This is the side of the head, and the shorter side is going to be top and chin. So it's going to be wide, a wide head, wide-ish head. Okay, so we're going to drop that down onto the surface for a moment because we want to put a little cap on there in black. In the meantime, I need to stabilize where it's going to go. Now, it's actually really difficult because it's not a very high platform for this to go through. I'm going to attach the head probably more on to the body than you think. So if your cap is roughly where mine is, I'm going to come into about here. So it's probably just armpit level. Pop your stick in, and just bear in mind as well that we don't want this to poke through. So we'll just take it off, having left maybe a centimetre of spaghetti stick. You could use a cocktail stick, but it's such a small piece that I'm reluctant to put anything other than something edible in there, and I would certainly want to tell people that it's there. So the tip end of the cone is underneath the cape about here, and I'm coming in more kind of down, it's kind of the neck, just above the ribs kind of area, armpit, level with the armpit. And that needs some glue around, just so we know. I would come across here because it's going to sit on the whole of the shoulder, just so we know it's going to hold. Go around the stick, not on the stick. And then that can be left while we're working on our head, which we're going to work. You can work off. I'm feeling like I want to work on the model actually, so we'll put it on. It's either way, so you can decide. If you think it's going to be difficult, then work off. If not, that's got to go. Your support stick's got to be in the middle of the head, so it's coming right on. And you can twist it if you want. So depending on how you want him to, you might be facing an angle rather than straight down to his foot. That looks quite comfy, doesn't it? It does look comfy. Some prefer to work and create the details like the part, his cap for his head off, but I always worry that it's going to flatten, which is why I'm hesitant on that one. So I'll let you decide. When you're happy with the positioning of the head, we can put some marks where everything else is going to go. So we can use, we've got the spaghetti sticks, we can use that as our little mark making machine. And I'm going to find just below the middle, this way, press in and open that up. That's going to be where the nose goes. It's really good to have a starting point and a guide, and the nose is a good place to begin with that. So then you know where you can glue for the cheeks. So either side of the nose hole. And when I make Santa, we make cheeks. He's got a beard as well, but this is, it's the same. Once you make one figure, you can start to see how you can create different ones using the same features. So either side, a little bit of glue, and then we'll come back to our yellow, the bit that you've left. And let's just do a bit of a test. I'm just going to hold about 1 centimetre ball, will do one cheek. So 2 1 centimetre balls, or 2 balls at the same size, roughly 1 centimetre. You want them to have really big cheeks, and you can make them bigger. Just make sure that when you attach them, there's enough room for the nose and to mark in the mouth. So I'll make those 2 balls the same size. Rolling in my palm. Keep them as balls. Nice bit of warming up. Tight press, hard press on your palm. Release the pressure to form the ball. Check the same size. And then go ahead and position these. Now, when you do this, you want to very gently, you need to support maybe the back of the head a little bit so it doesn't flatten. Start to press around the outside edge with the thumb or finger so that they do expand a little bit, but more importantly, that they are holding. This one looks like it's just been plonked. This one looks like it's been kind of neatly pressed on, and you want to keep it quite rounded. We don't want chocolate buttons, just enough to hold it on. And they shouldn't slide because they're not vertical, they're just at a bit of an angle. We can bring these in a bit as well if you want to make him look cuter. So closer to the nose. So I've got a little smile tool for my mouth, and you can use a straw. So if you've got a straw from somewhere like Costa Coffee or the big ones, and just cut in, you'll be able to get yourself a smile tool. So if this one's not the right size, you can always hunt for a straw that is, and cut that to shape and just keep it in your arsenal of tools. Now, when you come to create the mouth, it is literally just an indent. So I'm going to come in between and below the nose, so in between the cheeks, below the nose, and just press in. I might want to then, while I'm pressed in, pull down a little bit just to open it up and then carefully come out. If you're worried that it's going to stick, then use corn flour on the tool. Now, on the other end of this particular tool, I've got maybe the equivalent to a small paintbrush, and I can use that to create dimples. So I'm going to come in either side of the smile at the top here and just press to create dimples. You can get that effect from a kebab stick end. Cocktail stick's a bit pointy, back of a paintbrush, the spaghetti, the neat unbroken end of a spaghetti stick will give you the dimples. And then just decide, do you feel like your cheeks are in the right place? Yes, no, and then just move those into place. So we'll take some of our black that we have left. You won't need a huge amount. Again, like I've been showing you, we want to consider how much paste we need in the first place. And it's surprising, when we made the sting for his tail, it wasn't a very big piece of paste. I think it was only about 1.5 centimeters. And if you overdo it, your piece of paste ends up very thick and just doesn't look right. So I'm just going to shape this a little bit so that I can see how this is going to fit on the head. It's a bit like a cap. This little cap. It's this sort of shape. And I haven't glued anything, so I know I can just rest that over and then make it come over his head, and then just have a look to see how far at the back it hangs. So that is probably fine. I'm not going to glue anything on this at the moment because I don't know exactly where it's going to sit and I don't want the black to bleed. So I'm going to make the shape first. So what we're doing, nice and crack free. If it's not, go back to the warming up stage, especially if your paste is not overly fresh. I mean, this one's been open, this packet's been open for a while. Ideally, I should have frozen it in. So we're just rolling in or pinching in. You could do it between your finger and thumb, a bit of a point. I didn't tell you how much paste. 2 centimeter ball. Get that into a point. Tease it out a little bit more. And then with a bit of corn flour on your palm, you're just going to press out the bottom, keeping the point, maybe between your finger and thumb, because we now need to make this more rounded. As a circle, we need to make that patch bigger. Okay, so just, if it starts to crack on the edge, you might have to re-roll it. So opening that out a little bit more. I can tease the point out a fraction more, which will give him more on his forehead. It's not very, very thin. It's a little bit cracky. You just need to watch that. Go back to flattening if that's going to help you a little bit. Now the size that's come out at the widest point is about 3.5, just over 3.5 centimeter, and lengthwise about 4.5. And this is going to sit at the tip of his nose and then gently pressed into place behind his head. Now at this point, I don't like gluing on black because it does taint the color of your glue, but it is more precise to come just inside. Make it just so that you've got a little bit of glue with a big minimum ½ centimeter gap unglued on the edge. Just enough to hold this in place, and then start with the point lined up with the tip of his nose, just above where you've marked the hole for the nose. And then slowly start to press in. I'll just change angle so you can see this. So it's gone onto the tip of his nose, it's drawn over his forehead, keeping it as straight as possible. If your hands have got black on them, try and avoid touching the yellow. And then we're just going to gently press his toupee on into place, curl it under at the back. You can make it wider, it can come more over on the sides here. You can either make it bigger in the first place or just stroke, avoiding touching the yellow. That's really interesting because when you make hair for a character, a human character, it's better if you make a patch like this to stick onto the head first, and then you create the strands of hair. So you give him a toupee first, and then you mark in. And if I were marking this in, I mean, I wasn't thinking of doing it. I suppose I could try, but you would mark in your strands of hair, starting with maybe a central parting. Don't do this unless you like it. So we'll start off with a central parting and then think to yourself, well, how would hair grow? It'd be coming off to the side, so you could have your texture of hair on there as well. But I'm just showing you that so you can see how you would start to create the hair on top of a male or a female's head. Optional on your bee. Okay. Just remember it's a cartoon, so you don't want to be too precise, otherwise it might look a little bit strange. Deeper cuts would be better. More precise, more spaced side strands of hair. They don't have hair, but they do have, they are furry, aren't they, when you think about it? Optional. So we're going to glue just for the eyes and for the nose. And then we'll get a little bit more black. Probably got quite a lot of black left. Make penguin or a panda. Warm your paste up. And then if you make it come, it's just a small quantity. If you make it come to a bit of a point and pull that off between your fingers, roll it into a ball. That is probably blackberry pip size, so it's no more than ½ centimeter diameter. But we want to match that. It's very difficult to match it in size. Just keep going until you've got two that are pretty much the same. So we've got two here that are the same, and these are ½ centimeter diameter. I'm just going to press that to flatten it slightly. Depends how big you want the eyes, but this bee is asleep. So we've pressed it. Now I want to do is just straighten it off on one end, which will be the eyelash end. So all I'm doing is using the cutting wheel to just press up against it so it becomes a bit straighter on one edge. And on that straight edge, I'm going to draw a cut line just above where we've straightened, so that you've got, looks like an eyelid with eyelashes, but it's not. And then we've got to get this off our finger, and it can be transferred onto the model just above his cheek. So I'll just show you that again. We've got a ball here. Whoops. Press it to flatten it into a disc. The bottom end, which is going to be the lower part of his lid, just flatten it off a little bit. And then use the cutting wheel to draw across to create a little eyelash section. And then that eye can be transferred to the other side. They look quite cute if they're fairly close and onto the cheeks. It just looks like he's smiling in his sleep. And if you feel like they're too far apart, then just bring them together a bit. The eyes are 2 balls, 1/2 centimetre diameter, flattened. You can do this on your palm as well. Make sure that they've come out roughly the same size. Level off the bottom end. You can use your knife for this as well if you prefer. And then draw across to cut in the eyelids. And if it helps, you can use a knife or your cutting wheel to lift them. The line and the straight edge would be the lower part of his eye, so the bottom of his eye, and just simply transfer and stick in place. How we make the nose. The nose, I want to come in over 1/2 centimetre, so it's nearly 3/4 centimetre on the ruler. And I just like him with a big nose, but you might not. So ball, roll it so it forms a cone on one side. So literally, as you make your ball, once you've made your ball, put your finger right on the end of one of the sides and just pinch, press down and roll backwards and forwards. So it feels like it's pinching the paste, and you'll end up with a nice point. And then we pick this up and pop the pointy end into the nose hole that you've already made and glued. If you then press it top and bottom, it will become slightly more oval. And if you feel the need to then close the cheeks up, you can. And if you want to, you can make his nose bigger. I think he looks a bit chipmunky as well. You could definitely make a chipmunk like this, couldn't you? Okay, so fold up piece of kitchen towel under his head, in between the cape and the head. That will just help him sit upright a little bit more. Just check his position, make sure you're okay with how he is. So the antenna, that's the last bit. So I've got, use a pair of scissors just to cut that third length of 28 gauge wire in half again. I'm going to take the paste, a small amount, so it could be 1/2 centimetre, like a pip, same as his eyes. Nothing too big, because it will actually, even the weight will pull the wire. You can work with 33 gauge wire. You could actually, you could work with dental floss. I mean, clearly the wire is not edible, neither is dental floss. So you could definitely, it will be droopy, they'd hang, but it might work. These 2 pieces are quite straight at the moment. So I'm going to use my rolling pin, or you could use a fat back of a paintbrush stem. Just position the wires under the rolling pin and press them onto the pin so that they become curved, like whiskers on a cat. Now, it's optional whether you do that curve before or after you put this little ball on, because of course we need to draw this down into a cone shape. So if this is awkward for you, you could do it the other way. No glue, press the ball onto the wire, and then between your finger and thumb, press the bottom, just turn it a little bit, give it a roll maybe. So it looks like a matchstick. Just gonna change angle because I'm aware that this is coming off screen. Okay, so we've got this little matchstick. Now, if you're worried it's going to come off, of course you can put a little bit of glue, but sometimes I feel like maybe you form the shape first and then catch it, because if you've even the smallest amount of glue is going to make it really oozy, and that bit now, once it's dry, it'll hold. You could even wait till these are dry before you attach it to your character. So I'll just show you that again. Try it. You could try it straight. I always worry that you then can't curve it because it's in the way, but if you find it easier to get the ball onto the wire while it's still straight, press and twiddle down so you make yourself like a matchstick head. And then at this point, if you're careful, just try not to flatten it, you can create your curve. And those pieces, again, I'll just change angle, are going to go on. So we have one, they're sort of in about halfway. So you've got the point, then you come above the eye, leave about 1 centimetre above the eye, and then come in by 0.5 centimetre. They do have a mind of their own, by the way. You could put a bit of glue on them. I quite like it if you can get one coming forward and maybe one dropping backward, or both forward would look quite nice. On my original figure, I've used 33 gauge wire, so they haven't held. The weight has just pulled it right back. So I'm just redoing this one because it's come off. It's a bit like twiddle and twist if you've ever used that technique on flower making. Curve. And then in. It's like a sunshade, isn't it? Lazy days. Just remember to put that piece under. Of course, you leave that until you give it to the person that you're, or until you put it on the cake. Okay, so here we have the completed bumblebee in sugar. He has got his little bit of tissue supporting the back of his head, but that can come out once you're ready to display him or give him away. And I hope you've enjoyed making him. If you've just watched the recording and you want to have a go, then here is the kit list. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. My name is Hannah at inspiredcreations.uk.com. So I hope that you have had a good time, and I'll look forward to seeing you again. Bye bye for now.